Hi everyone, and welcome to our brand new garden space. 15 meters wide, 60 meters long. It truly is an exciting opportunity. And if you're new to my channel or haven't caught up in the story so far, definitely check out the last two videos where I talk about the story of us getting here and have a proper look around the garden, talking about the practicalities. Well, today, it may be one of the shortest days of the year. It may be a gloomy, misty day. The wood's still shrouded in fog, but that doesn't matter. It's an exciting day because of this. Yes, here in my hands, we have the plans and the garden design for this amazing opportunity. In today's video, I want to discuss the process of designing a garden, how you, or maybe at least I, have approached this blank canvas space, actually put pen to paper. I want to discuss the whole process, from inspiration, practicalities, considering what I want from the garden, through to actually getting that design on paper. It's going to be an exciting one. If you're watching this video in the future, feel free to comment with what I've changed over the years, what I definitely didn't stick to, and also the mistakes I made along the way. But if you're watching this video right now, then definitely please leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts, feedback, ideas, they're all welcome. Over the past 5 years, when I've been carrying out my various garden projects, I've had so much valuable expertise, information, ideas and thoughts from you all in the comments, and I definitely take the time to read them all, so you could have a chance to influence this garden here. But anyway, enough about that, let's get into my exciting garden design. First off, talk about the practicalities. In my last video then, I had a simple but detailed walk around the garden, really talk about the practicalities of this space here, and I summarised those briefly as the 3 S's: soil, sun, okay, maybe not today, and also space. No matter what the dream garden vision you have in your mind, or in this day and age of AI, there's loads of great tools out there that can really help you get a vision together, really build on some general thoughts and put them into an actual practical design. Wherever you've got your design ideas from though, you've got to consider those 3 practicalities. In that video, I discussed that we're quite lucky here. The soil is quite a rich, fertile, friable mix. You can grow a lot of plants here. After a couple of very wet months, a lot of rainfall, the ground now is quite wet, but even despite that, it's not overly boggy. There's no standing water anywhere. So in that respect, we're pretty good. If you've got proper problem soil, very free draining sand or heavy clay, then there's maybe things that you need to consider before you actually start planting and planting. Do you need to improve that soil? Do you need to have raised beds? There's a lot of different ways around things. A problem soil also presents an opportunity, and with maybe a different style of planting or positioning things differently, you can still grow the garden of your dreams. But for here at least, the soil, I'm pleased to say, is pretty neutral, not just rubbing it in. Like I said, a nice rich soil, a nice deep soil. There's no stony bed just a foot down. It goes very, very deep. So very, very lucky in that respect. And when it comes to sun, well, there's a simple tool that I didn't share with you last time, but I'll show you right now. It's an app for your phone, and it's called Sunseeker. Nothing to do with this video, but it's an app I got a few years ago and it really has been helpful. So I'll just talk you through it now. I'll put the name of the tool, Sunseeker, and all the details in the description below. But for me, the most useful element of it, and I'll try and do this whilst holding the camera on my phone, is very simply this 3D view. As you look around the garden, you can see the path of the sun. The bottom there, that shows where it is on that yellowish line, December, the winter solstice. Above it, you'll see where it is in September, and right up there, that red line, that's where it is in the middle of summer, or roughly anyway. So you basically get 3 different tracks. This is fantastic because no matter what time you move into your garden, you don't necessarily have to wait 12 months, although it is a good idea to find out what plants are beneath the ground. You can move in and see straight away where the path of the sun is going to go. So you can very clearly see that this border here, which I'll point out with my little finger because that's all I've got left, this border here is going to be the sunny border. And in summer, pretty much the whole garden, with it being west facing, gets sun. The border behind me is directly south facing, so a beautiful sunny border. And then like I mentioned in the last video, over there, that side in front of the fence, because the sun's so much lower in winter, it's a lot more shaded, a lot wetter and a lot cooler. And for me here as well, going back to the soil, the garden gradually slopes from right down to left. So the ground at that side there is going to be wetter. So those are my main considerations. Obviously, I'm nothing to do with Sunseeker, but definitely if you're moving to a brand new space or have just moved to one, definitely consider downloading it, because it's well worth it just to find out the path of the sun and to really position those full sun borders and areas of planting the most efficiently, no matter what time of year you moved in. The final of my 3 S's then was space, which I talked about all in my last video. Looking down here, you can see a leftover little bubble from running around with Harriet, our 3-year-old daughter, earlier today. Plenty of running, plenty of enjoying the space already before I've even done a thing. Most of my enjoyment though will come from planting it up. But I really am definitely 100% wanting to really preserve that feeling of space over the years. It's such a beautiful area. I just love that feeling of openness. The rest of the garden is very, we'll say, enclosed. It wraps around you. I love that too. But you've really got to work with what you've got, haven't you? And for me, I really want to retain that sense of openness. So although I want lots of tall plants, lots of trees, for me, it's about being really considered with the space, particularly when it comes to where I'm planting the larger things. I will move on to that design, which is precariously balanced on the hedge, very, very soon. But I just briefly want to discuss, for me at least, the 3 places where I want to block things with taller plants. So the first one for me is when we walk into this space. So you're going to pass this polytunnel here and then walk in. I would quite like something tall around here, so you can't literally see through the whole garden. Even in a space like this, which I don't necessarily want to split into garden rooms as such, I still want a nice visual sort of barrier here. You can maybe see through it a little bit, but you don't get the whole garden just rushing at you. I quite like the idea of just meandering around here, coming up here, and then the garden gradually open up in front of you. So that's where, purely from a design perspective, I want something taller. The next things when it comes to space are what you want to block out. So you can see there, we've got a metal shed. The wind often also filters quite strongly through here. I say filters, it's more funneled really. The wind really gusts down here. So taller trees at this side can really help visually block the parts of the view that I don't necessarily want to keep, and also help slow the wind down at critical moments. So again, at this side here, some taller things. I quite like the idea of having taller things at the end. So firstly, as more of a focal point at the end of the garden. When I say taller things, I obviously mean trees. For me, a garden isn't a garden without trees, and there'll be plenty going in, you will be pleased to hear. Plenty for me, plenty for the family, and plenty for wildlife as well. And also over that side there, there's plenty of houses. So a nice bit of screening on that side there, but nothing overly tall, because I don't want to really block out the sun and again, restrict that feeling of openness. So those are the 3 main areas I want to block. Something at this end here to block those houses a little bit and create a focal point. Something when you first move into the garden, and then also at this side here. But I will still be planting trees down this side. However, there'll be nice gaps in them as well to give views of the countryside beyond. And as mentioned in the last video, nothing too tall because of the lines up there. Definitely don't want to get involved with those. So that's my general space. For me, the critical mission is preserving that feeling of openness and have plenty of space to enjoy. When this garden first became a real possibility then, before I put pen to paper, my provisional thoughts were around 70% lawn, 30% planting, some crucial pockets of planting to give me real enjoyment, to help frame the space, provide seasonal interest, but also retain loads of room for us to enjoy as a family. But before I go into the details of my plan, I think we need to talk about what I want from the garden. For me, as soon as you've worked out the practicalities, the space you're really dealing with, it's time to ask yourself the question, what do you want? And for that, I've created a bit of a list, 10 things I definitely want from this garden space. This next step then is so incredibly important. What you want from a garden space. To be honest with you, this time round, I think you have to get it in writing. No matter how you want to design the space, no matter how nebulous and fluid your ideas might be, I always think it's well worth writing down what you want from that garden, what it needs to provide. And now, as the sun's just beginning to poke out, you'll notice I've brought a bit of paper. Now, I should say, you probably realise most of the videos, they're definitely not scripted, but for the purpose of this, for explaining these 10 things I want from the garden, I've written it down to keep it short and to stop waffling on because it's quite chilly out here. The first thing, like I mentioned, open space. I want lawns in here. I want places for the family to enjoy. Our 3-year-old and other imminent arrival along the way, they want plenty of space to enjoy. That's what having a big wide garden is definitely all about. So I really want to keep big, wide open spaces. We'll say in the region of 10 to 12 meters wide, something like that, most of the width of the garden. That really is critical. And although these aren't in any particular order, I put that first. The second thing I put down, again, not really in order of priority, but possibly, is trees. Like I've just mentioned, for me, you can't have a garden without trees, especially a big one. Obviously, there's trees for any garden size, but for me, the first exciting possibility of having a large space like this is the potential to plant some really exciting trees, and lots of them. Whilst money is a little bit tight at the minute with all this, you'll be pleased to hear that I did sell some stuff earlier in autumn, late summertime, and I bought a good few of the trees and shrubs that go into this garden here. There's some real beauty, so I'm excited to share with you in a video very soon. So those definitely key. We then got a sustainable garden. Now, I don't necessarily mean environmental here, but obviously you'll probably know if you watch my videos a long time, I am generally organic here. I do lots of things to keep everything in the garden, minimize any waste going out, and also reduce inputs in the garden where I can, following sustainable practices like mulches, improving the soil, etc., etc. But even as I'm saying all that, I appreciate it's boring. It's not what you want to hear. You want to hear about why my garden is going to be sustainable, and that's because it's a no-faffing garden. Yes, unlike all the planting over there, this garden, I want plants which perform. I don't want plants which need lots of digging up, lifting, protecting in winter, and I don't want plants that are real divas and need a huge amount of water, fertilizer, care, staking in summer. They need to be truly tough, hardy plants in the traditional sense of the word. Plants that can cope in our northern UK weather, in this changing climate, adaptable plants. And these days for me, that really means plants which can cope with both winter wet and also sustained periods of drought in the summer. I need plants that can tick both those boxes. So very tough plants, definitely on the agenda. Whilst it's nice to dream and have your head in the clouds, I think for me, part of it is being truly honest about the amount of time that I've got. I have a full-time job. My wife works as well. I also make these videos, which is a thrilling hobby, but something which is definitely a second job sometimes in terms of the amount of time it takes. So my time when it comes to truly looking after the garden, doing the weeding, which I occasionally do, it's minimal. So I really want plants that can perform, because I know for the next 5 years, 10 years, life is going to be tremendously busy. And I want this garden to get better and better every year without a huge amount of input. So I really think it's important, no matter the size of the space, at least consider your own practical amount of time you're willing to put into your garden and how much you physically can do. It really does affect the planting and everything else in such a big way. Anyway, let's get on to the next one. My next absolute must on this space then is to have a different style of planting, something completely different to anything I've done before. If you're new to my channel, then my channel is called George's Jungle Garden. I have a proper tropical style jungle area. I've then got a more Mediterranean, arid, exotic area, lots of different blends of planting, but all brought together by my use of incredible sculptural and structural exotic plants. So naturally then, when it comes to taking on a brand new space connected to our original garden, I definitely want to have those exotics running through. If you watch my channel, don't worry, nothing's changing in that respect. But rather than having a lot of experimental, often temperamental, beautiful, rare, unusual, exotic plants, I really want this garden to be a greatest hit of the exotics that I know I love growing, and I know seem to love growing here. The real tough ones, the real hardy ones, but also importantly, the most structural, sculptural, and beautiful ones. Those will definitely be running through this space. But in terms of the main planting style, things are going to be different here. If you've watched videos for a long time, you might notice little hints of things that are potentially changing. Maybe a little bit of autumn colour, maybe a mixing in of a couple of other different styles. I do like the idea of hybrid gardens, and now I've got the chance to actually have one of my own, so things will be a little bit different. If you love growing exotic plants, then maybe consider this area. It might feature a lot of plants which maybe capture the colour, the exceptional forms, the exquisite beauty of those exotics, despite being more readily available and normal garden plants. If you have broader plant interests, then for me at least, I want this garden to feature a lot of seasonal interest from plants known and loved by others, but also with my own kind of exotic twist to it. I definitely want it to feel like my garden. If you're intrigued about the planting, I will have coming up over the next couple of months a little deep dive into some of the exciting plants that I've grown here, from trees, shrubs, grasses, perennials, through to some of those amazing exotics, which I've now finally got time to give a home in the ground. It's going to be an exciting year of planting for sure. For my next must-have from the garden, I've gone back to paper because I was getting carried away then talking about plants. My next absolute must-have from this garden is photography. I absolutely love photography. It's almost as much a part of me as my love of gardening and plants is. It's huge. And whilst our current jungle garden has got lots of diverse planting, it doesn't really have any particularly long views. So most of my photos are Instagram, Facebook, my own personal stuff. They tend to be more close-ups of plants and little vignettes parts of the garden. Having a space like this that opens up, you've really got to take advantage of that. So I want to create as many beautiful views as I possibly can. So again, that means not closing the garden up too much, having little vistas in the garden, having focal points, and having lots of different borders, different styles throughout the space. That's what I really want. Definitely key for me. And next up then, just trying to get a point where the camera can sit, where the sun isn't blinding me in the face, but I'm enjoying it for a few minutes while it's here. For me, another critical thing that I want for this garden here is to provide a haven for wildlife. Here, we're on the edge of the village. You can see behind me, there's fields, countryside, paddocks, a lot of different land behind me. But this part of the garden, it really is closer to that rural countryside edge than any of the rest of the garden. For me, I feel if you've got a space like this, it's almost something you need to do. It's a duty to provide somewhere for the wildlife to enjoy. That doesn't just mean putting bird feeders out and providing a little bit of water in a bird bath. It's about every animal, every form of wildlife. So for me, having a garden like this, it really gives me the potential to create different habitats. A little wooded area, obviously some more water going in, some drier, sandier areas potentially, lots and lots of places for the creatures to live. I think in this day and age, we often get carried away thinking about what wildlife needs and doing arbitrary little things. But let's face it, if all you have is a bird feeder, you're not going to get many birds unless there's a tree for them to sit in. I think habitat really is absolutely critical. Habitat and the way you garden. So in that sense, things will definitely be continuing from our existing garden. I want to have the same philosophies of improving the soil, letting things die down naturally, providing lots of homes for those insects over winter. But now I've got so much more potential for trees to bring the birds in, for lots and lots of different plants of pollinators. I want huge amounts of butterflies, bees, hoverflies, wasps, possibly the wasps, I might not mention that to my wife, but every kind of insect, every kind of wildlife that I can bring to the garden, I want them here. So for me, that's definitely one of my key 10 commandments, we'll say. I'll rattle through another few for you then, just while the sun's out and I can pretend it's warm. The first one I've got here, flexibility and experiments. For me, although a lot of the garden will have trees, it'll feature shrubs and more permanent planting, or hopefully permanent anyway, I definitely want room for, we'll say, things to change over time. I want room for different seasonal displays. I want room to try and change things. I'm going to plant a lot of plants in this garden this first year, just to see how they get on. So the garden, as much as I will possibly go for a transformation by late in 2026, it's not going to stay that way every year, and I won't want it to. So I want the flexibility to change borders around, have areas of perennials, grasses, things that I can chop and change every year to my heart's content. That is part of the joy of gardening, isn't it? And I also want the flexibility for the garden to change in time as well. As my free time changes, as my garden styles and interests change, maybe our daughter, soon-to-be daughters, want to get involved out here. I want to have areas for them to change things as well. No one knows what the future's going to hold. For me, having a garden that's flexible with areas of planting that can be chopped, dug out, changed, adjusted every year, that's part of the fun. Who knows where this garden will be in 10 years' time? But what I do know is I'm sure there'll be another raft of exciting plants I want to try growing, and it'd be nice to have areas where I can experiment with those. Then I've got somewhere to sit and enjoy the space. As much as I've talked about having areas of open grass, open lawn, I definitely want somewhere to sit and enjoy it. And for me, at that end of the garden, looking back on the creation, so to speak, there's something definitely enjoyable about that. You get the morning lights up there, and then as the setting sun goes down behind the woods, you've got that beautiful golden light filtering through this space. With the low hedge there and a few very special trees, I can only imagine it'll be a beautiful place to enjoy, and it feels natural just walking around the space. So I definitely want somewhere to sit and appreciate it all, even if I very rarely sit and appreciate it all. Next up, I've already mentioned this one, water. Yes, there will be some water in the garden here. Obviously, there's a potential to go a little bit crazy with water features, and I won't be doing that because for me, like I said, open space and planting, they're really what I want this garden for. But I can't ignore water, not for the wildlife and not for me either. So there will be one pretty, we'll say ambitious, but hopefully natural and beautiful looking water feature going in. More on that later on in this video. The last thing I've got on the list then, whether it's the most important thing or not, I don't know, but it definitely ties everything together. I've got here simply a bold design with the wow factor. Now, you should obviously never aim for the wow factor above all the other things I've talked about. For me, a garden with seasonal interest, a garden with space to enjoy, views to enjoy, plants to enjoy, means so much more than just simply hitting you in the face with wow. But it'd be nice if I could have a little bit of that magic as well. What I've got here is originally my plans for this area. When I first dreamed about it years ago, I wanted to have something ridiculously over the top, something that hit you in the face as, wow, this is truly an incredible space. I mean, something completely ridiculous. Whether it's a tunnel you walk through, huge, great big arches going over the top, a ruin, or something completely over the top. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's maybe something to be said for really going all out. But I think, to be honest with you, over the past few years, maybe it'd be dangerous to say I've matured as a person, but maybe my interest in the garden, potentially it's just because I've got a new space now at the end of the garden, closer to the countryside. I want something a little more natural, a little bit more relaxed. I think that really is important. My reasoning for that, well, to be honest with you, it actually ties in with my visit to Pan Global Plants. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. It was more of a chat with Nick as much as a walk around his garden, and we had lots of thought-provoking discussions there. For me, one key point that Nick mentioned was the idea of beauty versus botanical interest. You see, you can have an amazing garden visually, but individually, the plants, you know them, you see them everywhere. They're maybe not particularly beautiful or interesting to you. But then equally, you can have a garden which is completely full of rare, unusual, exciting plants, but overall, the look isn't maybe visually stimulating and it's not traditionally beautiful. Not that you have to go for that. So for me, it's a real challenge to try and balance those two. When I'm having one of my most self-critical days, I see parts of my current garden and think, that's too cramped. I've got so many amazing plants here just pushed together and I haven't thought about the design enough. But, you know, let's face it, it's a jungle-style garden. You can definitely get away with a lot in that style. And moving out to a garden with more negative space, a different blend of planting, a more relaxed blend of planting, it is definitely more sophisticated, which is something I spoke with Kieran Manning from the Navy New Build Jungle after I filmed the video there. It really is interesting how these chats with gardeners keep coming full circle and really help inspire me. That's definitely what it's all about. To summarise then, for me, the dream goal is very simply a beautiful space full of interesting plants. As simple as that. Lots of exciting, unusual, rare and beautiful plants, irrespective of how much they cost or where they come from. But overall, I want the look to be exciting, thrilling, colourful, beautiful. Even if people who visit aren't interested in exotic or jungle gardening, I want this garden to really have the wow factor. But more important than any of them is what it feels like to me. If I can combine a beautiful space that I enjoy photographing, sharing with you, with my interest of growing those plants which provide so much enjoyment over the years, then I know I've truly made the dream work. At the end of the day, life is too short not to go for it, and it's long enough to correct any mistakes. So let's get into it and try some real exciting planting here. For me, the next step then is inspiration. You know what space you're dealing with. You know what you want from it. How do you picture that garden coming together? Well, you've got to have something in your mind, haven't you? And there's no better time to actually look at other gardens and borrow some of their ideas. I've kept a bit of paper out because I'm very aware of how long this video is becoming. So sorry if you were using this as a practical guide to how to design your own garden, but stick with me. This is how I've designed mine. The next step, inspiration, I've got 6 written down. Well, there's obviously loads more than 6 gardens which have inspired me and will inspire this space, but these for me really are the critical ones. The first one, I've got Dan Pearson. Now Dan, if you're not aware of him, a leading UK garden designer and writer, truly a poetic, inspirational figure. He has such a way with words and the way he describes plants, and you can tell he really appreciates the beauty, the particular beauty of plants, what makes them shine, how to position them in the landscape. And I actually loved a video produced, I believe, by Gardens Illustrated. Again, I'll put a link to it in the description below. A 45-minute tour around Dan Pearson's garden. Very, very inspirational, very, very educational. For me, Dan, one of the things I really appreciate about him, and I'd love to visit the garden one day, it's truly the way that he can use exciting plants in a more naturalistic, flowing setting. That's what I really love, and that's what I want to absolutely master here in my space. If you want to grow the exciting plants, the exotics, it is about, again, linking back to our chat with Nick, it's about positioning those right in the garden. It's about softening them with flowing plants, perennials, the grasses, to really create that beautiful space. Everything has to come together, and for me, Dan truly is an expert at doing that. The next inspiration I've got down for this space specifically is Piet Oudolf. Now, I'm presuming you're familiar with the Dutch garden designer synonymous with the new perennial movement. He, along with several other key figures, really played a huge role in us introducing more perennials and grasses into our gardens. As we moved away from the shrubs of the 70s, winter interest, everything like that, for me, one of the things about Piet Oudolf is the way he prioritizes the best of the plants. So very simply, he grows the grasses and perennials that perform all the way through the year. He grows the ones that perform best in tricky situations. He grows the ones that provide the season of interest for the longest time. So there's definitely something to be said about growing a perennial or a grass that not only looks great in summer and autumn, but it also holds its form and shape in the winter too. Again, maybe it's just something about the way, you get old, you appreciate things at different times of the year. But I don't just want the garden that looks great in summer. I want the bones of the garden to look fantastic in winter too, particularly in an exposed space like this, as the crows call in the background. I just love the idea of loads of grasses and perennials slowly fading away, covered in a frost. But let's face it, for me, not a criticism, but something I'd like to put my own twist on, is to introduce more of these exotic evergreens into that perennial mix. Because let's face it, as much as we look forward to these crisp mornings with blue sky and a hard frost on plants really showing off their sculptural beauty, most days here in the UK during winter are wet, grey and cold. So definitely something with a bit more life in the planting scheme, a little bit more architectural beauty. And for me, that's where the really key exotics come in. The next one I've got down here, pan-global plants. As mentioned, Nick, fantastic garden, beautiful plants. And I really love the flowing blend of exotics, exciting perennials, rare plants from all around the world that he grows there. I first visited back in 2019 after a few online orders, and I just remember taking my camera and loving the mixture of flowing perennials, these huge, great big Trachycarpus bamboos behind. What an eclectic but beautiful flowing mix. And that is, again, exactly what I want here. Next one is a proper garden, Chatsworth House. Now, if you haven't been to Chatsworth, it's just beautiful. For me, exotics aside, it is one of my favourite gardens. It's one of my favourite spaces, particularly here in the north of the country. I mean, as a garden, Chatsworth has got everything. You've obviously got the grand house in the middle of it, but to be honest, I've never even been in there over all the years I've been going. I just love the feeling of the place, the open countryside, the position between that rolling valley. You've got the capability brown design landscape. You've got the river flowing through it. You've got the beautiful parkland with gorgeous specimen trees. You've then got the woods. You've got fountains, you've got ponds, you've got tumbling water, you've got ravines, you've got everything. But I just love the feeling of the garden, the way it presents areas as separate little gardens, things to enjoy. And I also really enjoy the exotic garden there. There's something about just winding your way through a garden, past all these trees and beautiful planting. And then you see this exotic little jewel. I guess, yes, it's exciting to have lots of exotics in one place, but there's also something exciting about going on a journey through a more traditional garden and then the wonder of seeing them. And that's something I really want to encapsulate here. So whilst, yes, I can't obviously create my own Chatsworth here in this garden, I do love elements of the garden. I love little design touches they've got, little focal points, little avenues, and I want to bring some of that here. And then, well, this section here, I've got most of the gardens that I've visited for this channel. Obviously, when I visit gardens like Shane's, like the Secret Garden of Louth, like 50 Shades of Green garden, I don't go there because I think it'll make a great video. I go there because I want to see the garden, and I think there'll be fascinating gardeners to talk to, and I just happen to film a video while I'm there. So all of those gardens will bring something to my garden here. I mean, from Shane's, the way he positions water features, and they look so natural. From the 50 Shades of Green garden, that winding journey, again, the use of trees, how many trees they can fit into a small space, that is something I really want to incorporate here. And the Secret Garden of Louth, I mean, where do we even start? The way that their garden is such a flowing journey, but you've got these beautiful little areas sat in it. How you can grow a full rainforest of different plants from all around the world, but the whole garden feels like it's got one style, one personality. That's something I'm really keen to incorporate here. And also the way Jenny, plant obsessed as ever, has so much seasonal interest in the garden. Just because it's skewed towards their summer open days doesn't mean that there isn't something to enjoy in autumn or in winter or in early spring. There's so much to see there, and it truly is a beautiful garden. If you want to see any of these gardens, definitely check out my video playlist, Garden Visits. There's those and tens more in there, which I'm sure will really give you some ideas and inspiration. And then finally, before we get on to my design, I've got Mark's crazy tiki garden. What can I say about Mark's garden? Well, begrudgingly, I do have to give him a little bit of respect and appreciation, because his garden might just have inspired my design for this garden here. And it's all about the circles. Now, not about the blue balls. This one, I'm talking about the actual design of the space, which I believe was potentially inspired by Jenny from the Secret Garden of Louth. But, well, let me get into my design and you'll maybe see where Mark's influence comes in. Let's get into it. To go through the design then, I've come into our brand new polytunnel here. You'll see at the end there, a couple of exciting new plants destined for the new garden. But those, yeah, like I've already teased, there will be some exciting videos on some very special plants coming up soon. But for me, when it came to my next step of the garden design here, it was very simply print out some overhead 2D views of the garden, which I shamelessly just copied from Google Earth, made them go black and white and made them a little bit lighter so I could draw on them. Obviously, you want to visualize the garden in 3D, but for me, there's nothing like sketching something out on actual paper. Yes, proper garden designers have all kinds of software and stuff, but for me, thinking about it on a computer, I'd be thinking about the software and what I'm doing as much as doing it, where simply sketching it out, it gives you a kind of freedom, inspiration, and creativity that I don't get on the screen. So what I did, basically, a load of different versions here. You can see the top one, absolutely rubbish. Like I've already mentioned, I want the garden to be around 60% lawn, 40% planting, somewhere around there. I've tried a couple of different designs. My first thought, and I hope you can see this all right, was a very big circle. Now, yeah, it definitely gives me that planting room at the far end. It gives me the planting here. I've got my, we'll say, statement tree or visual blocking when you first walk in. I've got the screening to this shed over here, and I've got lots of room for tall trees, a wildlife area at this far end. That's great, but let's face it, it's not a very imaginative use of the space, is it? Just because I've set rough ratios of lawn to planting, I think 50-50 I said, didn't I? Somewhere around there. Just because I set that doesn't mean it literally has to be in one block. The problem with this garden though is, as soon as you come out there, you can literally see everything. There's no intrigue. So yes, you've got the open space box ticked, and technically I have got the areas that I want, but I don't like the overall design. I need to have something more from it. So, and I don't know which order I actually did these in. I've just got them down and sketched it out. See here again, some of the very early designs. I tried thinking about different borders here, but again, it's very boring once you've moved into the actual open space. Just because you've got an open space doesn't mean you need to see it all in one go. I think that's something that it took me a bit of sketching to really realise. I tried the idea of having a long border, something I've never had before. One very dramatic, very grand long border. But again, you can see the whole thing in one go. Where's the excitement in that? I need a little bit more intrigue, a little bit more of a dynamic design with different pockets of light and different views to capture through the year. So, I created a couple more. The top one here, very similar to the last one. Didn't I say around 60% planting and 40% lawn? I think it was somewhere around there. This one here lets me have more planting around the edges. Different little pockets, plenty of room for evolving borders, plenty of shade at this side, plenty of sun at this side, a bit of room for everything. I like the flowing lines, but again, you can see everything. It took a while to move away from that. But at least through these provisional designs, I was thinking big, I was going bold. Yes, there's something to be said about making a start on one part. And as one of you suggested in the comments in my last video, that's the best way. If you're feeling intimidated by space, just get on with it. But for me, one thing I have realised is the real value in dreaming and going big. If you start a garden piecemeal, it can be too easy to fall into a trap where the whole garden feels completely separate, like lots of different pieces. Whereas at least being bold with the shapes, it definitely feels intentional, and you've got the potential there, if you get it right, for something really amazing. And then I settled on this idea here. This was my final provisional sketch. The idea of two circles. Now, jokes aside, you can see where the similarities to Mark's come in. He's got a series of circles in his garden. Now, they're obviously not end to end, but I quite like the idea of circles because they let me play with things a little bit differently. You can bring in areas that you can't see past. You can have different pockets of planting, different trees to help visually break the garden up, creating that kind of avenue effect. I knew this wouldn't necessarily be the final design, but I could see there was something here. And that's what led on to what you'll see now, my design for this brand new garden. Yes, 3 hours in, I'm finally going to show you the design. So let's head over there and have a look at it. Right then, the bit you've all been waiting for. You're expecting something professional, aren't you now? Designed with AI, printed on the large printer that I should have used at work. No, instead, you've got this. Well, you had that anyway. What a tease. Right, let me get this set up properly and we'll talk about my garden design. So here we go then, professional as you like. We've got the polytunnel where we are right now, just there. The other side, we've got the eucalyptus trees, the olive tree there, the yuccas all around my fire pit area. That is the entrance into the garden, through the gate there. You can see there my big Djibouti palm, little palm beds there, plenty of exciting exotics. But then, as we venture out into the garden, things take a little twist. You'll notice that it's a series of circles. What I'll do, so you can see it a little bit clearer, is put a picture of the garden design on the screen now. And I'll keep it up for maybe 10 seconds. So if you want to pause the video and have a look at it, you can definitely do that. This isn't a perfect design. It's not even 100% definite. Things will change. As always, I like to have a rough overall idea, but the actual implementation is definitely a little bit fluid. And let's get into my thoughts on what I've got down on paper. So like I mentioned, a series of circles. I quite like that idea because it lets me have what I wanted. 30% lawn, 70% planting was the ratio I think I've stuck with. You can see I've definitely achieved that. Now, these circles, although they look quite small in the context of the design, each one you need to remember it's got to be around 12 meters across. So it's still a big area of grass. Obviously, something I mentioned in my last video, having a strip of lawn right the way down the hedge there, that's something for practical reasons, a necessity. And also visually, I don't want the plants like the grasses and stuff getting lost into the hedge itself. But let me go through the design in a little bit more detail. So then, as we enter into the garden, you've got this flowing path here. Like I mentioned, nothing is 100% definite, so feel free to chip in with your comments, ideas and suggestions in the section below. This side here, this is largely a raised bed, or at least the middle section of it will be raised as well. That is one way that I'll be tying in the new garden with the existing, because I've already got a bit of topography here. These yucca stratas are grown on a little mound. I want to continue that on. I've got a lot of soil left over from digging the fire pit. Some of it's quite claggy subsoil, so I'll be mixing a lot of organic matter in with it and using the best stuff for the top. But the idea is that this is going to be a gradual mound in the middle. Now, there might be some special bamboos going down this side here, which don't need to be raised up. They'll appreciate all the moisture and also help not only visually block the house and that shed over there, but also help slow the wind down as well. But most of this section here will be a beautiful grass border, but really going for it. I know a lot of us tropical style exotic gardeners, we like our grasses, but we work them in. I want to revisit the idea of a grass border, but completely over the top. Only the biggest, the best, and the most exciting grasses are really going to form the backbone of that border. So that's going to be exciting. A very special tree will be going there. Something with spectacular foliage, something with evergreen beauty, something maybe like that Pinus engelmannii, which you might not have seen for a couple of years, but it's grown very nicely and it wants a home in the ground. Looking there, just on the entrance, I quite like the idea of a few waggies or something similar there. Why those palms there? Well, again, visually, it will help tie the garden in with the existing. They're a familiar plant, the Trachycarpus, that repeated throughout my jungle garden. And also, probably the main reason for that is the light. I just love the idea of having the silhouettes cast through this polytunnel here. Just like at the minute, you can maybe see those palm leaves there. Something stunning about that. Just, you know, that's basically what I want it for. To that little light, a little bit of silhouette in, fantastic. Beyond that point, the garden opens up again. So my thinking for the whole sort of area is very simply repeating a lot of the same plants throughout the space. There's a lot of room for trees, smaller trees particularly. Remember I said about the lines that run down this side. I don't want to interfere with those. But there's some very special trees I also planted either side here to frame this view quite nicely. Now, one thing I haven't put on this design here, but I'm really open to your ideas on, should I use the sleepers to create a kind of picture frame like I have in the rest of the garden? For me, that'd be a nice visual design cue that will tie it in with the entrance to my jungle and also that other archway that I built this summer. I might build these in a little bit more sensible fashion, but we'll see how it goes. I quite like the idea of that. But regardless of whether I put the frames in or not, I think some beautiful trees here and then a lot of tall, stately grasses, perennials, will help visually, we'll say, split up the garden whilst not restricting the views. At this side here, I've gone right next to the hedge, so you can see past it. Now that, my thinking, is very intentional there, because I want to have these views, I want to have pockets of views. So you're seeing across the countryside all this way here, you're then seeing it there, and then you're going to get further glimpses of it as we travel down the garden. There's no point having a little piddly border a foot across, so I like the idea of opening it up completely. And as well as that, it also gives room for the dogs to get through here, run around. They can get up to all kinds of mischief, just finding their own little adventures around the garden. And Harriet and her sister on the way as well. Definitely exciting stuff. Now, one thing I will say with this little pathway here, now, I'm not entirely sure if I'll be better off having two pathways, because I have fallen into my usual method of having one trip down the garden. I might be better off having a pathway, we'll say, round there and one round there. So that way I can have a central block of plants. Let me know your thoughts. I'm in two minds about it. Now, when it comes to the circular design, obviously I've showed you how I've got here. I tried experimenting with one big circle. I didn't like that. I tried two, and then I thought the idea of three, I like it. It gives a nice bit of, we'll say, planting opportunities around the side, but it also presents those beautiful lawns that I definitely want to prioritise. I'll say it again. However, I originally had the lawns literally in a line, identical sizes, one after the other. The idea for me was really to keep that view looking down the garden, to keep the idea of a focal point. And it was actually when Shane visited the garden here, we had a little bit of a plant day, and he said, no, you want to offset them. And as much as I had considered it, as soon as I changed the design, I was like, yeah, obviously that needed to happen. So my rough sort of idea is this one's kicked off to the right, that one's more to the left, giving the slightly smaller border there. Great for climbers though, because I haven't got many climbers in the garden. And then this one is relatively central. So that way you naturally create a garden where you can't just see from one end to the other, because this entrance here is going to be off from that one there. Lots of little views open up, lots of teasing, lots of anticipation, which is what it's all about. So far, so good. Lots of excitement. But that ramps up when you come to this section here. My thinking for this area here is a little bit exciting. Big ponds there. This is the higher part of the garden. So my thinking was something very similar to what Shane has in his front garden. Maybe a few taller exotics at the back there. Maybe a very special tree. We'll see. We'll get onto that. And then the water gradually cascades down the stream, nothing too violent or loud, under a bridge. A bridge is an obvious necessity. At the end of the day, we're playing in our gardens. If you can't have a bridge in your garden, then you're not even trying hard enough, are you? So I definitely want a big bridge there, but a very wide bridge that's enough for a lawnmower and wheelbarrow and everything to get over. Nothing too precarious here. And then that water will gradually flow away until it reaches this other smaller pond at the end there, which might be a pond, or it might be some sort of pondless sump type feature, just to return the water back to that stage there. That, again, is a bit of a grey area to be confirmed. This section here in the middle, that is some kind of garden building. Now, one thing I will say, most of this garden is on the flat, apart from the soil that I've got to use at this end anyway. So broadly speaking, the garden isn't massively high budget. I've already got a lot of the key plants stocked up already. The pond, I won't be doing that for a few years anyway, or at least another year or two. That I want to do it properly. I want to do it with the right materials. I don't want to be cost cutting where I need to get a decent pump and liner, etc., etc. And also, while we've got a very young baby next year, it's not the best year to do it. So a few years' time, when she gets a little bit more sense in her, definitely that'll be the time to do it. It obviously needs to be child safe. I can't stress that enough. But this building in the middle there, my thinking is very simple. This garden, it has to be garden land. It's not land that you can build on. And I wouldn't want anything that you need planning permission for anyway, but under permitted developments, you can have a small garden room or potting shed or whatever you want to call it. So my thinking was very roughly, this isn't exactly to scale, 5 by 3 meters, just under there, 15 square meters the most you can have. It'd be awesome to have a little garden building there. There's a deck area or veranda in front of it. And at the back, some bays for storing pots and also potentially composting. So that's the big plan. Ultimately, it's maybe something where I build the concrete pad over the next couple of years, and then eventually, as and when funds allow, build an actual garden room on it. Because those, even if you're building it yourself, well, £5 grand probably won't go very far, will it? If you're going to buy one, you could probably look at 5 times that, which is completely out of the equation right now. And I possibly wouldn't want to spend that anyway. So that's going to be a long-term one. But at the very least, I could have somewhere to sit down, somewhere to enjoy the garden. And you can just imagine, if I show you it from the other point of view, sitting in there, looking down the garden. Just imagine that I've used AI to get this popping off the page at you. So you're looking down your garden, you've got the ponds there, you've got a bridge, you can cross that, all these beautiful trees, flowing grasses, that bank of grasses there rising up in front of you. I think that will be an exciting view, not just the plants within the garden, but also the countryside beyond. And then at the back, we've got one of the most exciting bits for me. The exact position of these trees, it's not definite. I want a woodland essentially. A group of trees, obviously you know what a woodland is, but rather than necessarily having a path through it, I mean, there will be a path through it, but rather than designing it like a small gardener would, try to appreciate every inch of the space, I want to set it back and allow a group of trees and large shrubs to be a view. You see them behind the garden building there. They provide a focal point, they also provide a backdrop to the garden. Rather than literally trying to garden every square inch of it, I want a more naturalistic woodland setting. That'll be fantastic for the wildlife and beautiful in the autumn as well. The actual trees and positioning are to be confirmed, but I think really I can accentuate the existing hedge. I do want to keep the fruit trees that are there, especially that mature old apple tree, that's the one there, but then have some exciting trees in the middle of them. The way I see it is I want to grow trees which provide something the native ones, I'm not saying they don't, but I've got an exciting oak tree which has arrived just this past fortnight. I've got that Pinus engelmannii. I've got lots of beautiful trees with fantastic, stunning autumn colour. So I think that will really tie in with the woods from a distance. It'll help the wildlife, but it'll be completely magical and adds another seasonal dimension to a garden, which traditionally is at its best from July through to September. I want to extend that in every direction. And I think this design really does that. Let me know your thoughts then. What would you change? Like I said, I'm not too precious about this. I just very quickly put it up in some free software I found online. So nothing is 100% definite. The lines can all move, the circles can move. I've tried changing the size of circles and I think I've decided on something which lets me get a decent border where there is space for one. I can literally have, 2.5 meter border there. That's good. This side here, again, a good size border there. Where they are a little bit narrower, fantastic for climbers, and I've got loads of amazing shrubs that can also go in as well. So although you might be thinking that's a massive space to fill, believe me, I'm already at the part of the journey where I'm thinking this is a very finite space to fill. When you start looking at trees and you start noticing that some of them say ideal for parkland, you realise that 15 by 60 metres isn't actually that big. So believe me, I am already at that spot. But what do you think about the design? I know it looks good in 2D. I know in theory, I think the 3D visualization of it works quite nicely. I like the focal points. I like the vertical structure. I think I've made good use of the space. But have you got any thoughts that would be a real game changer? Would you change something subtly or dramatically? What would you do with this path here? Would you push it further back there, further around here? Let me know your thoughts. One thing that I've been pretty intentional about is not having the circles touching each other. I did try it with 4 circles and it looked a little bit, they were a bit too small, let's be honest. They need to be bigger and grander, bolder to make the whole design work. But I've made sure there's a gap between them. And that way, one thing I have learned from Matt's garden is where the circles touch, you end up with we'll say a little point of garden that you can't really make the most of. So I've tried to push them away and really open this space up here to give a lot more exciting planting potential. So there we go. What do you think? Let me know. If you want to influence this garden design, now is your time to do it. I will be putting out a few videos over the next month, going through some of the planting and ideas, but I'll be getting on with this very soon. What do you think? Is it grand enough? Is it bold enough? Is it exciting enough? I'd really be keen to hear your thoughts. That then is the garden design that I've put together. As always in my videos, it's never really a how to do something, just how I've done it. I'm not a professional garden designer, but going through that process, looking at the space, looking what's there, thinking about what I wanted to get from the space, thinking about the inspirational gardeners and gardens that really hit home for me and what elements I wanted to incorporate here, sketching out some rough kind of shapes before setting on the circles, and then kind of shimming the design up into something which I think really has the impact that I want. And those 3 circles, I'm pretty sure, are about there. For me, it's been a tricky journey because the space is a dream space. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's amazing spaces on the edge of cliffs or next to grand woodlands or in ravines. But for me, this is a dream space because it's right at the end of our current garden. That in itself ticks so many boxes. It's also an opportunity to plant dream plants. For me, some of the most exciting trees, thrilling shrubs. There's going to be some truly beautiful and exceptional plants you'll see on this journey. But I never really had a dream garden design. And I guess that's where a lot of you are as well. So this is literally the process that I've followed to change what is a dream space, an opportunity to plant those dream plants into something that ties the whole thing together. It's not about the design, but also it's all about the design, if you know what I mean. What comes next then? Well, over the next month, January into February, I'll be talking about some of the most exciting plants I've got lined up for this amazing garden opportunity. There's some true beauties. Some of them might just be twigs right now, but those are little twigs full of promise. And I might as well share them with you at a time when you can be buying them and thinking about planting them as well. There really are some amazing plants here. And then I'll be getting started with the garden journey. Those first steps, practical first steps, and putting the effort in that will pay off for years and years to come. And this year for me is going to be all about this garden journey. Don't worry, I won't be forgetting the existing garden. There's some projects to sort out there too. And I won't be completely juggling. This will be my main focus here because I want to get it to a point late in summer, early autumn time where it looks like a garden. You see the colour, you see the beauty, you see some incredible plants in the ground, and seeing those plants grow year after year, that truly is what it's all about. I just want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you who commented, liked, shared, did everything with my first garden story adventure a couple of videos ago. Honestly, the positivity and the amount of you that commented on that video, it was overwhelming. Truly, thank you very much. It meant so much to me that you felt like you'd shared this journey with us and you can see really the dream, the goal we're working towards. And I hope today's video has brought that a little bit closer to home. But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching this long rambling video, but I hope it's given you all the background and all the creativity that's gone into what I hope will be truly a design for life when it comes to this garden here. Again, as always, let me know your comments in the section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. See you later.